Welcome to the Pyramidical podcast. I'm John Razimus, and in this episode, I'm going to be discussing a few things I've been researching lately. I picked up a book about Nikola Tesla, and Nikola Tesla did some amazing things in his time. There are a lot of rumors about Nikola Tesla that I really don't like. For example, defamation type things. And he's dead, so he can't defend himself, When he was alive, a lot of people tried to make him into a mad scientist. And now that he's dead, people are doing even worse. They're making up total garbage, like he's in love with a pigeon. He was celibate his whole life and was in love with the pigeon on his windowsill. Now, that's a total lie. It's total garbage. It's actually to defame him, to discredit him. Nikola Tesla was never in love with a pigeon. He had a pigeon who visited his window, who he gave breadcrumbs to. Case closed. He's guilty of that. How many New York residents are guilty of that? Probably millions upon millions of New York residents are guilty of feeding New York squirrels and New York rats and New York pigeons. They're not in love with those creatures. Maybe they love them or consider them pets, give them names, but they're not in love. You know what I mean? So that's just disrespectful to talk about Nikola Tesla as if he's some crazy guy, because they always put celibate with his love of pigeons. Now, the fact is, Nikola Tesla was not celibate most of his life. He was known to be, in his earlier years, a gambler and a womanizer to the extent of apparently enjoying the company of women. And we don't know the extreme extent of that, but we do know that his father, I believe, was angry at him because of his gambling. His father didn't believe in gambling and was also angry at him for his womanizing. So we know that happened. Later in his life, Tesla met a famous French actress, and she dropped her handkerchief, and she probably recognized Tesla, or maybe she didn't, but she probably purposely dropped it for him. He picked it up, they made eye contact, he was love at first sight, and a romance didn't develop, but it was said that Nikola Tesla kept that handkerchief and never returned it and never washed it from that day. So he's clearly not some celibate freak. He was into chicks, but when he was in New York, or perhaps before that, I'm pretty sure when he was in New York, he met a Tibetan Buddhist. And this Tibetan Buddhist, see, Nikola Tesla was a type of guy that he absorbed everything around him, and he was so intelligent that he just absorbed things and used them for his scientific endeavors. And perhaps he thought he needed a boost in focus so his inventions would be more precise, so he could get more ideas. He was married to science, many said, and Tesla even said that an inventor shouldn't get married. They should focus their everything 100% on science. That's not an exact quote, but that's the gist of what he said at one point in time. This was probably after he met the Tibetan Buddhist. The Tibetan Buddhist told him all about the way. Now, if you're not familiar with the way is a Chinese philosophy that talks about yin and yang energy, and specifically yin and yang qi. Now, I covered in a previous video yin qi when I was talking about Dynamo Jack, also known as John Chang. John Chang was a strong believer, and is a strong believer, I hope he's still alive, an extremely strong believer in the way. The Orient way, the way that the people in China believe. This is ingrained in their philosophy, their religion. They believe in this wholeheartedly. And this Tibetan Buddhist told all of this information to Tesla. Now let me get down to the details. The details are this. According to the way, this Chinese philosophy and / religion, you have more energy in your spirit and your body if you do not, and this is getting into the gross spectrum, if you don't want to hear potentially R-rated content, do not listen any further. But this is Chinese philosophy. I've read multiple books on this, not on this particular thing. I've just read a couple Oriental occult books, and this subject is brought up time and time again concerning the Taoist immortals. And it is this, that they do not ejaculate on purpose. And a previous Chinese emperor took this to heart, and he would be with many young women, and the young women, according to this book, were overjoyed to be with the famous emperor of China, but he would never finish. He would never, finish the job, because he believed in the way philosophy so much. He believed that his yin energy would be stored up in his spirit, in his body, to give him like an immortal type strength. And this magical yin chi is the good stuff. See, yin is good, yang is bad. And so I'm guessing the yang is the black on the yin and yang. I'm guessing the yin is the white. And in all good there is a bit of bad, and all bad there's a bit of good, according to this yin and yang philosophy, which I don't necessarily believe in that necessarily, but I do believe in opposition to all things. But here is what this Tibetan Buddhist told Nikola Tesla, probably casually, maybe at the World's Fair, maybe at a cafe. I don't know the setting, but I do know it was probably in New York that this famous Tibetan Buddhist, or maybe he wasn't famous, but I assume at this point Tesla was pretty famous. He was in the company of Mark Twain and other extremely famous people. Tesla was like a rock star during his phase of having so many volts of electricity go through his body, and he lit light bulbs for audiences, and they bought his tickets and scalped his tickets for great deals of money. And his shows were always sold out during this time. And so Tesla is talking with this Tibetan Buddhist. This Tibetan Buddhist is telling him the way to have more energy in your life, to store up this yin chi. Just don't have sex with women, don't have sex, period. And if you do, don't finish. And that is a very obscure, interesting, ancient Chinese belief and philosophy / religion. It's very a mystical type of belief. And John Chang, for example, Dynamo Jack, believes in it. And he claims he gets all of his power from it. So it has a lot of mythological connections, like you can become an immortal. The Taoist immortals supposedly practice this philosophy and perfectly live the way to the point where they don't die. They kind of ascend. They kind of, in the Catholic belief, I guess they would call it, what do they call it? What's that? When they, they don't die. They kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi. They just, transfiguration or something like that. But Tesla takes this information to heart. He decides he's going to be celibate the rest of his life and focus everything on science. And I believe Tesla even met another woman in New York, or maybe at the World's Fair, one of the places that he goes to, and he purposely didn't conduct anything romantic-wise because he was focused that much on science. He, yes, had radical ideas, but these radical ideas came from China, the ancient Chinese philosophy. So they are no more radical than the Chinese philosophies. But other than that, Nikola Tesla had an extreme gift. He had the gift, and some people have this. I suppose some people are born with it and some people aren't. I can relate to it. I can relate to it to a certain extent. I believe I do not have what Tesla had, and I don't believe many ever will. Perhaps there is someone with this gift, as strong as Tesla, but concerning their circumstances, perhaps they aren't able to use it like Tesla did. But the gift Tesla had was he could visualize in his mind extremely elaborate schematics for inventions, and he could, turn the levers, pull the gears, shift things, move things, electrical devices, mechanical devices, extremely elaborate, put different wattage, see if that works. He would test his inventions in his mind before he ever tested them physically. And if they didn't work in his mind, he would never build them. If they worked in his mind, he was convinced they would work in real life. And when he built them in real life, many times they did work. But occasionally, and probably more than not, they did not work in real life. And he would really have to work with them over and over and over and over. And so it got frustrating to him, but many a times it did work. And this is a true gift that not everyone has. I would say is extremely rare, to the point where he could build an extremely elaborate alternating current motor and figure out how to rotate the magnets and whatever the case may be. I know I can't do that, but then again, I have never studied mechanics or electronics. I've studied other things. So I do get flashes, not in any way, shape, or form, in any grand scheme like Tesla's, but I believe many people do. It's just using your imagination. But to me, if I get a flash, it'll be a song. I'll get maybe a melody or a guitar riff, something like that. I guess the most elaborate thing I ever got was a book that I wrote in 2002. It came to me in a dream. And this is going off on a tangent, but this show is all about tangents. So I'm going to go off on this tangent. There's a guy named Vigilant Christian on YouTube. Everyone's heard of him, and I do not endorse or promote him in any way, shape, or form. I talk about him as a segue to talking about J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling, she ingeniously came up with the Harry Potter series, as everyone knows. Amazing books, amazing movies. I never read the books, but the lines of the devoted Harry Potter fans are a testament to how creative and inspiring to many readers they are. And J.K. Rowling claims she got the idea for the Harry Potter books in a dream. And that doesn't make her evil, but of course the Vigilant Christian claims she's evil because of it. Now, I believe in Napoleon Hill, a guy who wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich. I've read Think and Grow Rich about 1.5 times. I should read it 10 more times, to be honest. Napoleon Hill is one of my heroes. Think and Grow Rich is literally in my top 5 favorite books of all time. If you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, the copyright has expired long ago, so it's free. The PDF is 100% free, 100% legal on Google. Go to Google, type in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill PDF. It won't take too many searches for you to be able to find a free copy of Think and Grow Rich. It has a corny title, but it's the first most extremely successful self-help book. So it'll be in the self-help section next to some crazy books. I'm not into self-help books. I pretty much have never read a self-help book in my life except for Think and Grow Rich, because someone gave me a copy for free. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And I decided to read it. And as I read this book, there's something about it. What I love about Think and Grow Rich, and this is totally tied in to J.K. Rowling getting an idea of Harry Potter. It's totally tied in to Nikola Tesla having visions in his mind of what invention to work on. Think and Grow Rich is a book that Napoleon Hill, he uses language that I've never heard before, phrases I've never heard before. He apparently coined these phrases. He had a very stylistic, totally unique way of writing and speaking. He said things like magnetizing your mind. I've never heard of anyone say magnetizing your mind in my life. He said things like crystallization of your thoughts. I've never heard anyone say crystallization of your thoughts in my life. So when he just talks in this book about the more you focus on positive thoughts, positive things will happen in your life. Focus on negative thoughts, negative things will happen. That's not new. That's as old as time. But he elaborates and expands on that to an extreme degree. He talks about Napoleon Hill, a very cool name. He talks about the concept of rich-minded and poor-minded. Rich-minded people are rich and poor-minded people are poor. And he gives examples of poor people being afraid of money. And when poor people are given money or somehow come in contact with a great deal of money, they are usually so afraid of this money that they go to the authorities and they hand it over to the authorities and say, oh, I found this $50,000, authorities. Here you go. This is bad. I shouldn't have this. I'm poor. It's obviously not mine. I found it. It just fell off a truck, I guess. Here you go, police officers. And this is just an analogy. And I have totally changed it from the book version because I haven't read the book in probably 5 years. But my version is this. If $50,000 falls off a truck and you don't see it fall off the truck, you have no way to source it. There's not an address connected to it. It's just a box, unmarked box, nothing there. You know, this is my personal philosophy, and it probably sounds a little bit bad, but the universe gave you that $50,000. If you bump into $50,000 unmarked, the universe gave that to you. Be positively minded, and it's yours. Be negatively minded, and it's not yours. Be rich-minded, it's yours. Be poor-minded, it's not yours. I can tell you one thing. If I run into $50,000 cash falling off somewhere that I don't know where it came from, maybe it's drug money, I don't know where it came from, it's unmarked, there's no way for me to give it to anyone except for the police, 100% of the time the police are going to take that and say thanks. The police are going to give that to the police fund, and it's going to fund probably the chief of police's next Mercedes-Benz. Or maybe if that chief of police is nice, he will use it to fund his department and get a couple cars for his department, or a couple motorcycles, or whatever the case may be. But 0% of the time, the police will give it back to you. Back in the day, the police would have held it for 60 days, and then they would have given it to you. But that doesn't exist anymore. We're not in a world where the economy allows for that to exist, except for maybe in extreme circumstances, they'll give you 10% back or something. But in today's world, here's how it works. The universe gave it to you. If you tell the cops, you'll never see it again. If you tell your friends, there's a chance they'll try to take it or rat you out. I'm just saying, this is maybe a bad example, but be positively minded, you'll make money. Be rich-minded, you'll make money. Be negatively minded or poor-minded, you will not make money. This is not a podcast about money. This is about Nikola Tesla and his vision and how he got this information, I believe, from infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence is a term that Napoleon Hill uses to describe the source of information that has all things in it. New Age groups call it the Akashic Records. I prefer the Napoleon Hill term, infinite intelligence. I once heard a story about a guy who was at a storage unit auction, and it was during the height of the show Storage Wars, I believe it was called. And, I enjoyed that show so much, I went to storage unit auctions. I went to 2 different ones, and I bought one locker. I paid $100 for it, I believe, and I was able to find a pair of boots that I sold for like $25, and so I'm pretty much down $75. That's going to be your average experience at storage unit auctions, just to let you know. But because I was so into storage unit auctions at the time, and I'm not anymore, I'm probably never going to go to them, because it's just it's a hustle. The reason it's a hustle is because I would wager, and this is just a totally made up number, but I would wager at least 75% of storage unit auctions are rigged, in the fact that the storage company are crooked, in the fact that they rifled through every locker, took the good stuff out, and they're happy and willing to sell at auction the garbage that they left for you. So that's the reality I would believe is the case of probably 75% of storage unit auctions. So I do not recommend going to them. That TV show, Storage Wars, is totally fake and totally hyped up. Yes, if you do it full time and you invest tens of thousands of dollars, you might strike it rich, but the odds in a Vegas casino are greater. They're greater than a storage unit auction. But I was reading a story about storage unit auctions, and some guy found, and he totally legally won this unit. I don't know how much he paid or bid. This is probably 4 years ago. I can't remember the details, but some guy rightfully won a storage unit locker. He probably paid $150 for it, maybe $250. That's going to be a pretty standard price for one of these. He rifles through it and he finds like $450,000 in cash. $450,000 in cold hard cash, dollar bills, $100 bills. And this guy is poor-minded, and I'm not surprised that he's poor-minded, because I've been to 2 different storage unit auctions, and a lot of these people are, they look pretty poor. A lot of them look like they haven't had luck in many years. A lot of them look like they're depressed. A lot of them are, let's just say, they're using this as a means to gamble, and a lot of them strike out. But this guy hit the jackpot, $450,000 cash. Now this guy, it's probably his only score he's ever had in his life, let alone storage unit win, let alone anything even remotely as big as this. So he finds $450,000 cash, which reminds me of a story. I remember years ago when I was living near Buellton, California, they found a storage unit filled with drugs, filled with like $1 million+ of drugs. And so, yes, drug dealers use these storage unit lockers to hide their stuff. They probably buy the locker with a fake name. I don't know. But I guess they consider it safe. A a police cop sniffed out the drugs in one of these storage unit lockers, which I recommend if you cops want to find some drugs. Probably just take your drug-sniffing dogs through these places. So this guy's $450,000 that he found in his perfectly legal unit, it's legally his. He paid $150 for it. He hit the jackpot. If you pay even $1 and you win an auction for a locker, you open it up and there happens to be something worth $1 million in there, it's yours. You legally paid for it. People didn't bid too much on this locker with $450,000 because they didn't see the $450,000. They probably saw one cardboard box, maybe two or three, maybe some trash bags were hiding it. We don't know, but this guy is poor-minded. Like Napoleon Hill says, he's afraid of money. He literally takes the $450,000 cash, instead of straight to his bank account or instead of straight to under his mattress, he takes it straight to the police. He takes it straight into the police, and guess what happened? The police assume it's probably drug money. Use a cheap excuse like, it's probably drug money, let's take it. So they took it off his hands, and he never saw a penny ever again. This guy was probably devastated. He probably thought after 60 days they'd give it to him. That's not how it works. I'm not saying cops are crooked. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. But I am saying that in this economy, most police units are going to want to use that money to fund their unit. They're going to want it to fund in whatever shape or form to help their community by funding what the government has probably taken from them in this or that. You know, the honest departments, they're not going to have quotas and pull over 100 people in a day so they can get money through the tickets. But the dishonest ones, that's what they do. They pull over 100 people in a day because they have a quota that they have to meet. And I remember the Ferguson chief of police was caught for that, and he had to resign because of that, because he was caught illegally having a speed limit quota, which I know for a fact probably happens where I live, because I see 4 cars lined up having been pulled over at the same time on one street. Anyway, so that's totally different tangent. Back to Think and Grow Rich and Nikola Tesla getting infinite intelligence information. Now, what does Think and Grow Rich have to do with infinite intelligence? Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill talks about ideas. Napoleon Hill says there are very few new ideas in the world. He says there are so few new ideas, and he's talking about good ideas specifically. Napoleon Hill said there are so few new good ideas that those who can churn out good ideas on a regular basis are most definitely likely connected with infinite intelligence. And the people who do not have good ideas ever, quite frankly, they might have gifts in other areas, but according to Napoleon Hill, they're probably not connected with infinite intelligence. Napoleon Hill goes off on tangents, and he talks about there are different ways to get ideas. There are different ways to get good ideas. There's basically rehashing or infinite intelligence. That's the only way to get a good idea. Rehashing, reading a book and getting someone else's idea and considering it your good idea when really it's an old idea that's been ripped off over and over and over, time and time again. But there are still a few new ideas that are good, and the only way to get them is through infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence, Napoleon Hill goes off on an extreme tangent where he talks about many different ways to get it. One of the ways Napoleon Hill got it was through imagining talking to his heroes. such as Abraham Lincoln, heroes such as that. He would talk to these famous people in his head. He knew it was his own imagination. But through that imagination, somehow, he claims infinite intelligence gave him advice. And makes me think about Hillary Clinton. Now, I don't talk about politics in any way, shape, or form, but just this one tiny thing. I don't care who wins, who loses. I'm never going to talk about politics. But Hillary Clinton claims she used to have conversations with Eleanor Roosevelt and Gandhi in the White House. And I don't know if these were seances or if she was using the Napoleon Hill technique of talking to them in her head. Now, it worked for Napoleon Hill. He wrote books on the subject. He sold these books. They were New York Times bestsellers. Think and Grow Rich isn't his only big seller. He has many, many books. Even after Napoleon Hill died, a book that was a manuscript that he never published came out called Conversations with the Devil, I believe it's called. And I took a look at that book, and in this book, Conversations with the Devil, I believe that's what it's called. Someone could correct me. Napoleon Hill talks with the devil, asks how the devil is, all of his tricks. He asks all of his tricks. How do you trick people? What's your scheme? What's your conniving scams? How do you fool and trick people? How does it work so well? And the devil reveals all of his secrets. And Napoleon Hill's not actually talking to the devil. Napoleon Hill is using his old technique where he's talking to himself, which is very crazy when looked at through a certain perspective. But Napoleon Hill, in my opinion, was a genius. Very unconventional method, but he created a fake devil, talked to it, and it gave him apparently real information. This information was, if anything, someone would say just philosophical conscience, subconscious methods of screwing with your mind and whatnot, and getting yourself down and depression and whatnot. But that's an interesting book to look at sometime. I have not read the whole book. I only read, I believe, one chapter, because it kind of freaked me out a little bit. Reading a book about a guy talking to himself when he's trying to get the secrets of the devil, and the devil's fully divulging them. No wonder he didn't publish it. Probably the publisher said no to that one. But he's famous enough now where any of his manuscripts are published, I believe. But back to Nikola Tesla. According to Napoleon Hill, Nikola Tesla was like a lightning rod, perfect conduit to infinite intelligence. We're talking bam, whoosh, lightning rod, whereas most people are probably a slow drizzle of infinite intelligence at best, and Nikola Tesla was a lightning rod, stronger than anyone on Earth probably, concerning getting ideas. Now, I'm sure Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla's rival, was also a conduit to that infinite intelligence. As to who was stronger, it's, I guess, a matter of opinion, but I believe Tesla was stronger, because Tesla claimed that it's any wonder Edison got anywhere, because Tesla said Edison's method was like, now he didn't use these words, but just to give an example, he said it's kind of like a chimpanzee banging on something until genius happens. That was kind of Edison's approach from Tesla's perspective, whereas Tesla's perspective was thinking about it using this, what I would call infinite intelligence, until he worked it out in his mind and then had a really good blueprint before he ever touched paper or talked about building it. And Nikola Tesla built many inventions There's some mythological ones, such as his earthquake machine. I believe Tesla called it a Frankenstein machine or something like that. A vibrating hammer that you would attach to a building. And the hammer would knock the building until an earthquake-like reaction would happen to the building, and the building... Well, this is what happened. Nikola Tesla apparently attached it to the base of perhaps even his building in New York, and it's a tiny hammer that he could fit in his pocket. This hammer banged on the building, I believe, for maybe 6 minutes, so it took time to reverberate. It's almost like every time it hit was 10 times stronger than the last time it hit, or maybe just 1 time stronger. And eventually it created an earthquake-like effect. I believe the firemen were called to the building. Tesla, for some reason or another, maybe he was unable to detach it and he had to destroy the device in order to stop the man-made earthquake. And then he built the device a second time, unless this was the same device before he destroyed it, but he took either the device or a similar device to a steel beam that was being built in New York of a building that was totally unfinished, and he attached it to the steel beam of this skeleton of a building, and the workers were up there working on it, and he had it knocking the building, this little hammer device, reverberating, just vibrating. I think he might have even called it a vibrator. And it's vibrating and hitting and banging against this steel beam. And he said if he left it on there for a few more minutes, it probably would have collapsed into the streets. But it vibrated the steel beams so strongly that all of the workermen came down and came off of it because they thought an earthquake was coming. And he immediately pulled it off and put it in his pocket and kept walking his way. So in that case, he was able to just put it in his pocket. But whether these stories are true or not, they are written down, and I believe by Tesla's own accounts. So I do believe they're true. Tesla was a genius. He created many things. I could go on and on about Tesla. I heard a story that he created the first electric car. We do know that he did create a battery for the Model T, I believe. One of the earlier cars, he created the battery for it. And this is a mythological story, but he supposedly created a battery so strong and powerful that he could drive around in this Model T with this mysterious battery for 2 weeks without recharging it. Now, who knows? Maybe he did recharge it every night. Who knows? But he apparently, according to myth, created the first electric car. I believe it. Perhaps he toned it down and made it a lot weaker for the mass market. Tesla did keep secrets. If he felt people weren't worthy for it, he would hold back. I mean, he didn't tell Thomas Edison about his secret motor that he was building, his alternating current, as opposed to Edison's the DC. He had AC, whatever. I get confused in the AC/DC thing, but I can tell you this. Tesla kept that a secret for years, not a peep. He wanted to brag about it when he was working for Edison, but he knew that would probably be unwise. He knew that Edison would take credit for it and steal it. So he kept that a secret for years. But he would keep secrets if he felt people weren't worthy for it, such as when he was a kid, Tesla recounted his first invention he ever invented was a stick with, I've never seen a picture of it, so I don't know what it looked like, but it was a stick with a metal line and a hook on the end, and some type of simplistic frog catcher to catch frogs, because his friends apparently were into frogs, and they were catching frogs, and the frogs wouldn't go for the bait, but they would always go for this metal hook that he had on the end of this stick or something that he created, and he never told his friends about the hook and how the frogs were attracted to it until Christmas. So he kept it a secret for some time until Christmas, and with the Christmas season he decided to be sharing, and he shared it as his Christmas present to his friends. And Tesla was just an amazing person. I would like to go into detail on his death ray, but I don't know much of anything on his death ray. But that would have been something he would have definitely kept a secret. A death ray? I'm sure the militaries of different countries were probably greatly investigating Tesla after he became famous with his showing off his AC current going through his body, proving to the audiences that it was safe, as he was holding pretty much the first fluorescent bulbs ever made. Like 80 years before the fluorescent bulb became common, Tesla had them and used them in his demonstrations. And he wouldn't patent a lot of things. He didn't make much money. He was not a good businessman. He would get grants and funds from these investors, and he would do his best, and then people would steal his ideas and steal his work and patent it before him. That happened many times. And so he wasn't quick on the patenting, and probably near the end he kept all of his best new inventions a huge secret. The death ray would have been one of them. We don't know much of anything about the death ray. Could be total myth, could be totally fake, but if anything existed, the government confiscated it. All of Tesla's papers and documents and notebooks were confiscated by the U.S. government. And as far as I know, the U.S. government, and this is the day he died, the day he was found dead, the U.S. government confiscated all of the documents, all of Tesla's life's work. We don't have it. The government has it. You think they would release it, but perhaps, and maybe they have given some of it to the Smithsonian. I don't know, but I bet there are some amazing inventions that nobody knows about, because I guarantee the government officials that have those documents in their possession, they probably can't make heads or tails of the genius notes left by Tesla. It would probably take someone half as smart as Tesla to even decipher what the notes were about. But Tesla was a genius. He was not in love with a pigeon. I'm sure he had a pigeon friend that he fed occasionally. Tesla had many friends. The guy who designed Madison Square Garden, he befriended Mark Twain. Tesla told Mark Twain when he met him that when he was a boy of age 12, dying of malaria, or I can't remember what he was dying of. It was something like that. He told Mark Twain that as he was dying of this disease, that his books, Huckleberry Finn and whatnot, are what caused him to want to hold on to life and live, and that his books literally saved Tesla's life. And that brought a tear to Mark Twain's eye, and ever since that day, they became good friends. And that's definitely a cool mythological friendship right there, Mark Twain and Nikola Tesla. But Tesla was an amazing guy. I wish the government would release some of his documents, or at least release them to the scientific community at Area 51, or whatever the case may be. And when they release it to the public 50 years later, give Tesla credit. Say, you know what? Tesla invented this. It's a super secret stealth, this or that, whatever the case may be. It's a death ray gun created by Tesla. Too dangerous for human consumption. But Tesla's name is everywhere. The rock band Tesla, Elon Musk's car line Tesla, and his Tesla coils. The biggest Tesla coils I've ever seen were at Coachella, I think in 2007. And I recorded them. It was one of my first, actually it was my very first YouTube video, I believe. On 6/6/2006, I posted a video. So it must have been 2006 Coachella. It could have been 2007. No, I joined in 6/6/06. But anyway, I posted a picture of these two giant Tesla coils, and they were really amazing to see them up close. And I can't imagine Tesla's actual coils. And Tesla, as far as I know, still holds the Guinness Book of World Records for the tallest man-made lightning. I don't know the exact number. I believe it's around 117 feet. If anyone has beat that, it's only through borrowing Tesla's technology. And he was using it not to show off, but he wanted to actually wirelessly transfer information. He wanted a wireless internet with these huge Tesla towers. He envisioned something similar to that. And I can't imagine what Tesla would be doing today. I swear, if Tesla was alive today, everyone would have free Wi-Fi. And all the Wi-Fi companies would be pissed off. If he could get the funding, he would do it. And of course he would be blocked out and they'd try to destroy him. But he's the type of guy that wanted free electricity for everyone. He knew free electricity existed, that it could be harnessed somehow. He mythologically used the earth as a magnet in his experiments and supposedly bounced electricity between the entire planet Earth. Now, I don't know if that happened, but it's a crazy story. Apparently, around Tesla's lab, he used so much electricity that the soil was magnetized. That you could pick up the soil, and the soil itself was magnets and magnetized. And of course, he destroyed one of the power generators of the local power station. And when he told them to turn it back on, they cut off his power, and they said, "We're not turning it on for you. You owe us." And so he burnt out more than a couple transformers in his time, but I'm sure he invented multiple different types of transformers. But Nikola Tesla. Now, there are a lot of more interesting things I'd like to talk about concerning Tesla, but I don't want to go on forever. But this show is going to focus on the paranormal. Now, Tesla is paranormal enough, but Thomas Edison, for example, while Tesla is focusing on possible means of communication with extraterrestrials, which was one of his more out there concepts, Thomas Edison was doing something extremely out there as well. They were always in competition. Thomas Edison was trying to create a telephone to contact the dead. That is crazy. So Thomas Edison believed in ghosts, believed in the dead enough to want to create a telephone to contact the dead. Very interesting. I have not researched that. I would like to focus on that in a future episode now. I know there's a device. It's like a radio type device. You know the movie Frequency, I believe, where the guy talks to his son through the radio? The guy talks to his dead dad through the radio. I believe that movie's concept is totally ripped off of an actual device that supposedly existed. Art Bell had a show where this guy learned how to use the device by turning on the device and talking to the creator of the device, who was dead. And I listened to this recording. I can't remember the name of the guy. I'll cover this in a future episode. So in no way, shape, or form do I want to keep talking about something when I don't know the names of the guy. I can't remember, but it's fascinating. I don't like to use the term fascinating because there's a guy that has trademark next to that, but a lot of prestigious people believed in ghosts, and I'll talk about that in a future episode. For example, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes. Very intelligent guy. I would say probably at least half as intelligent as Sherlock Holmes. I mean, he created Sherlock Holmes, right? He believed in spirits, in ghosts, in mediums, but spirituality was extremely popular at the time, and so that might account for some of it. But Thomas Edison, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, many prestigious famous people believed in ghosts during the Spiritist movement during this time frame in the 1800s. And I will talk about that in the future. But as for now, this is pretty much the end of this episode. I'm going to call this episode the Infinite Intelligence Nikola Tesla episode, I believe. So Infinite Intelligence definitely is paranormal. Now, New Agers, like I said, call it the Akashic Records. How do you access it? How do you access it? I personally access it my way. I'm sure people access it their own way. Some people just sit with a pen and a piece of paper and think. Maybe a writer in Hollywood will just sit in a room and think alone until they get an idea and they write it down. Hopefully that idea came from infinite intelligence and it's good. But more than likely it's a rehashed idea that their subconscious is just regurgitating something they heard or saw within the past year. But I do prefer original ideas, and the only way to get them is through infinite intelligence, according to Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill is a genius. I want to do an entire episode on Napoleon Hill, and I probably should read the book again to really have a good grasp on his concepts, but he's someone I extremely admire. He used methods that were way ahead of his time and have been forgotten to those who don't read his book. But the way I get it, I'll tell you how I get it. I'm just driving to work one day and I get a flash of information. And it's, bam, totally spontaneous. I guess in a microscopic way, similar to Tesla, but in no way, shape, or form any grand schematic or anything like that. But a flash of, do an episode on this, research this, do that. Here's a little tiny bit of information on that. I'm like, whoa, where'd that come from? And I believe that's infinite intelligence when it's a really, really good idea and it's original. When you can Google search it and there's 0 results, and then you research it and find out it's an amazing topic, I would consider that infinite intelligence. But just random sporadic flashes when doing mundane things. That's how if I could explain how I get it. But sitting in a room alone, trying to come up with a good idea for a song or a book or a video or whatever the case may be, I think that's how most people get it. Led Zeppelin, I believe it was Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin, how he got the idea for the lyrics for Stairway to Heaven. He sat in a room holding a guitar, not playing the guitar, or maybe he was playing it, but I think most of the time just sitting there doing nothing in a room by himself. And even Jimmy Page said, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, trying to get the vibes, man. Trying to listen in on the new age waves and vibes, and to try to get that message." So that's in a super simplification, but basically they admit, Robert Plant and Jimmy Page admit, Stairway to Heaven came through a supernatural means, that they got all the lyrics almost at once, Robert Plant anyway, and then he wrote it down, and that after writing it, he's like, "What's this?" He's like, "I didn't write this. I don't even know what this means." Even to this day, Robert Plant does not know what the lyrics to Stairway to Heaven means. That he reads it occasionally or hears it occasionally, and he gets glimpses like, "Oh, is that what that means?" Even he doesn't know what it means. When you get something so good, information crazy wise, that even you admit that's too good for even me to have done that. That's a indentation and a trademark and a signature, bam, and a stamp that infinite intelligence was involved. And I will do an episode on Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin in the future. I'll do a totally separate episode on Napoleon Hill in the future, Think and Grow Rich. I'll do separate episodes on these different things, but generally speaking, infinite intelligence and Nikola Tesla are the two topics of this episode. And this is my first podcast. It is called Pyramidical, the Pyramidical Podcast with John Razimus. I do not have a video camera to record this, as my video camera is only able to record 12 minutes at a time, because I have a still camera, and according to that law, still cameras can't record longer than 14 minutes or so. And I'm going to purchase a new camera soon, and after that, every single one of my podcasts I will hope to record. So this is the first podcast unrecorded, video-wise, but stay tuned. Many more of these podcasts are coming soon. I will do the Jimmy Page occult episode coming soon on an obscure topic you may have heard of if you're a huge Jimmy Page fan. In no way, shape, or form am I ever going to be saying any super harsh and negative things about these rock stars. I'm a huge fan of rock and roll. And with that, I thank you for listening. This has been John Razimus with the Pyramidical Podcast. Be seeing you.